If it is true, it is time to be proven. Now, one of the other reports that had been doing the rounds was that the Iranians had managed to acquire this YLC-8B Chinese radar that has a range of nearly 700 kilometers. So any missile that would be launched by the Americans within the vicinity of this region would have been detected if the Iranians do have that Chinese radar that is being talked about extensively. At this moment, has the Iranian government said anything officially about the radar systems that it has in its possession and that it may have acquired in the last 12 months?
Iran often does not speak a lot or extensively about the equipment it could be acquiring from its partners, its Eastern partners like China and Russia. They usually do not speak about these developments because this is a matter of national security. Maybe,
but Iran does extensively talk about the missiles that it has in its arsenal, and therefore we do know about the missile capabilities of the Iranians, and it does put out these videos to demonstrate as to what the Iranian missiles can do. That was also exhibited in the 12-day war with the Israelis last June. But on the question of the radars and air defense systems, Iran has been fairly quiet. How do we explain that?
Well, of course, this has been admitted by Iranian officials that their air defense capability is not as strong as their missile power. This is something that has been admitted and acknowledged by different Iranian military officials. And of course, we saw it happening in June last year when Iran sustained severe damages out of the Israeli airstrikes. So this time around, Iran has, at least on the surface, it has said, generally, very generally, pointing to the moves or the measures it has been taking following the June war, saying that Iran has tried to rebuild its launchers and has been able to strengthen its air defense shield. So for now, as we speak right now, Iran has not been able to intercept the incoming missiles that have been launched by Israel. So it remains to be seen how this thing would play out and how serious or genuine Iranian claims are.
You know, that of course is something that we will find out in the next ensuing hours and days. One of the other challenges, Yusuf, that's been spoken about is the possibility of what happened during the protests, where the CIA and the Mossad have infiltrated into certain rebel ranks within the Iranians. Any updates on that front? Does the Iranian government expect any trouble to break out in these areas where there's been a separatist insurgency?
Well, this is a claim by Iranian officials suggesting that the Mossad and CIA and some Western intelligence services have been able to infiltrate the crowd and try to just derail the protests that began economically driven and then snowballed into anti-government protests. The justification is that Iran relies on comments by Donald Trump and by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself, and of course by other hawkish Western and American leaders like Lindsey Graham or Pompeo, who talked about this issue, saying and suggesting that the CIA collaborators or Mossad collaborators are walking along the crowd, the protesting crowd back then. But Iran has not been able to genuinely prove that there have been some elements.
Right.
But of course, if we rely on comments by those leaders, the Western, the Israeli leaders, then we can of course make some assumptions that the Mossad has been able to infiltrate and to try to steer the protests from peaceful gatherings to anti-government protests and then chaos and unrest.
You know, this was something that was tweeted by someone no less than Mike Pompeo, one of the key officials who was closely allied with Donald Trump. And also at this moment, considering as to how fluid things are and how difficult it is to predict as to where this is headed, At this moment, what is the talk within the Iranian circles? Because it's difficult to comprehend at this moment as to how the Americans will respond next. This is going to be a difficult night in Iran because there could be another wave of attacks that could happen. Is there any advisory that's been given by the Iranian government for its people? Tell us more about that.
Well, of course, earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and maybe even months ago, following the June war, Iran advised its people to stay at home and to try to avoid panicking and going out on the streets to try to just supply or get their hands on basic items, food items, and other necessities. This time around, the government is advising people to do the same thing. But of course, what is different is that shelters were absent during the June war, but right now the Iranian government has provided its citizens with shelters, and those shelters are located inside subway stations and other public properties, maybe,
right,
so to speak. But of course, Iran is now trying to project an image of resilience. We can see Iranian military commanders showing up on state television saying that the United States started this war, but we would be the ones who will end it.
Right. Now, the Iranians have maintained consistently that they are not going to negotiate on their ballistic missile program, saying that these ballistic missiles are meant for the defense of Iran. But the nuclear program was something that the Iranians were willing to negotiate with the Americans. Now, considering the fact that Iran has been coming under repeated attacks, it's happening now, it happened last year, for its nuclear program, and considering the fact that the Ayatollah had said that Iran does not seek a nuclear weapon, within the Iranian security circles and the top leadership, is there now going to be a rethink on what Iran intends to do with its nuclear program?
Well, of course, Iran does have this more than 400 kilos of highly enriched uranium, which is a major sticking point in the negotiations. The United States wanted it to be removed from Iran and be transferred outside to a third country, and Iran resisted, saying that this is a no-go because that 400-kilo stockpile represents Iran's sovereignty. And of course, it's a leverage in the talks. If Iran loses this major stockpile, it means that it removes any concern on the Western hemisphere regarding its capability to go towards a nuclear weapon. So Iran wanted that concern to remain and be preserved, and that would be a means to try to preserve its leverage and its upper hand in the talks, because this represents the major roadblock or the major obstacle towards achieving a deal. And that was repeated by the American officials. They're saying that Iran is not willing to make any concessions with regards to its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Of course, Iran has made it clear that it is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. Right. But of course, it needs that 400 kilos to preserve its upper hand in the dialogue. So right now, we're not sure whether or not Iran would see the necessity to move towards or pursue a nuclear weapon. As now, Iran is in a critical situation and it wants to win this war against the U.S. So we're not sure because even Larijani, the incumbent head of the Iranian National Security Council, before he assumes this position as the national security head, he made a very controversial remark saying that if Iran finds itself at risk, then it may consider changing its nuclear doctrine and move towards building a nuclear weapon to save itself from any aggression. So now this is maybe the time. We're not sure.
All right. Interesting. We'll have to see as to how that conversation within Iran proceeds, because in the North Korean case, the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made it clear the reason why North Korea has nuclear weapons is because it is the ultimate guarantor of its security. And because it has nuclear weapons, there is no nation that can touch North Korea. How will the leadership in Tehran now look at the question of going nuclear is something that we'll wait and watch for.